here to the flagship. Thank you. Thank you. So we're not going to keep you too long tonight, but we thought it was important to double back to PARCC results from last year, our first year. So what I'll do is start talking about some information you may find familiar. Then we'll smoothly transition into both the statewide and district results for PARCC for 2014-15. Then what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit more about your individual score reports that your children, I'm imagining that you have with you, and we'll talk a bit about how to interpret those score reports. And then we have a short video towards the end that will do more of the same. I would ask you that along the way, if you have questions, please feel free to shoot up your hand. We have a microphone that Mr. Mangili will pass along to you. Now, while many of you may have a loud voice, we are recording this, so we need to have you speak into that microphone so that it's captured by our recording device. Any questions before we get started? Good class, very good. Some background. In 2015, the PARCC assessments replaced our old assessments, the NJ-ASC and the HESPA in language arts and math. How many of you knew that? Very good. Students began taking these assessments in 3rd grade, as is required by federal law. As a result of a waiver won by the New Jersey Department of Education, students taking advanced coursework in middle school did not have to take 2 math tests. We'll touch on that a little bit shortly. Instead, they took the assessment that was most closely aligned with their coursework. For example, a student in 8th grade who was taking algebra was permitted to take only the Algebra 1 test and did not also have to take the 8th grade math PARCC assessment. Let's transition now into that PARCC individual score report and what we now talk about as PARCC performance levels. Student outcomes are divided, as you see here, into 5 performance levels. Pretty straightforward. I will quickly read them to you, but they're up there for you to review. Level 1 describes student work in the assessment that is not yet meeting grade level expectations. Level 2 describes student work that is partially meeting grade level expectations. We don't want the 1s and 2s. Even the 3s help us realize that there's more work to be done. No fear. Whether your child scored 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, we'll talk about what that means to you, our educators, and how we together move forward. Level 3 describes student work that is approaching grade level expectation. Level 4 describes work that meets grade level. Level 5, work that exceeds it. It's important to recognize, however, that while PARCC is a meaningful assessment, New Jersey has and remains committed to using multiple metrics in assessing student progress and attainment. We are not using the PARCC scores to place your children in specific courses or grade levels. We're not doing that. Decisions about student placement in the next grade level or course have always and will continue to be made by district personnel who will always be fully informed by multiple sources of information, such as student grades, teacher recommendation, and of course, your input. This slide here is overwhelming. Let me be the first to say that. But I felt it was important to share it with you, particularly those that have students in the high school who are fast approaching. As you have heard, PARCC is part of a portfolio of assessments that we use to meet a graduation requirement. That is, to graduate high school for the class of 2016, 17, 18, or 19, your child will have to demonstrate proficiency in one of several assessments. PARCC among them. So you'll hear people say PARCC is not a requirement for graduation, but Mr. Featherman, I see PARCC up there. Yes, it's there. However, if your child, for instance, doesn't achieve a passing score on the PARCC test, they can achieve certain cut scores on the ACT, the SAT, the AccuPlacer, ASVAB, ACT, and so on. So there's a whole slew of assessments that are offered in New Jersey to our high school students through which they can demonstrate graduation proficiency. They can pass high school. So today we're going to focus on the top layer. Here are your PARCC thresholds here. So if you've got your individual score reports of a student in high school, if your child is a 9th grader, just as for instance, and they scored level 4 in language arts and level 4 in algebra, they have effectively met their testing graduation requirement. Check it off the list. They've met their requirements for graduation in New Jersey. Likewise for sophomores and for juniors. And you'll see there are some differences in the level of scoring. For instance, we have level 3 here for your juniors. If you scored a level 3, 4, or 5, and in the Algebra 2, a level 3, 4, or 5, you have also met that testing graduation requirement. This is a lot of information here, but just rest assured that your high school staff, your guidance counselors, have a very thorough chart of each of your children. We're tracking this information, all of it. And along the way, we are encouraging your child, again here at the high school, to sit for the ACT, the PSAT, which we proctor here at the high school. Certainly the SAT, the AccuPlacer, which is an exam that's frequently used for placement into colleges, community colleges in particular. And of course, PARCC. Now, if all else fails, and I use the word fails loosely, but in this case it's applicable. If all else fails, there's one more option to get your child through high school. It's down here on the bottom. There is a portfolio appeals process. Your staff is currently working through some of those issues now, but at the end of the day, if none of these testing requirements are met, there is also a last resort, if you will. Now, thankfully, the last resort is not a very common circumstance for us. Mr. Featherman, is anybody on that list of last resort? Unfortunately, yes. We do have a couple of students who are on that list. They have not yet met their testing graduation requirement. And so a little bit later on, we will encourage you again, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, encourage your children to sit for the PARCC test. Give them these options, these opportunities to meet that graduation requirement. Question?
My question is if these requirements apply to students that have IEPs.
Yes. However, there's also an exemption component to students with IEPs. And so there's a chance that a student with an IEP will be exempt from meeting these requirements. I would encourage you to reach out to your child study team if you have concerns about that, your building principal, Mr. Kinney, Director of Special Services, but certainly there is an exemption status out there. Other questions? Okay, let's double back now and talk big picture here. Here are the statewide results of the first year of PARCC. This is the state now. Across the state, here are the numbers. Again, an overwhelming slide, lots of data, I apologize. But I just wanted to give you a flavor for where and how our students across the state performed. So let's look at the first row here, just to sort of acclimate you to what you're seeing, because in a moment I will show you the district's data in a similar chart. So if we look at third grade for a moment, across the top, you see in each of those columns what? Your performance levels, 1 through 5. So across the state, students in grade 3 that sat for the test, 15% of them are not yet meeting grade level expectations. 18% are partially meeting, and so on across the chart from left to right. What I will do in a moment is superimpose Cedar Grove statistics, and you'll see it just the same. Your performance levels, and in this last column here, which we find the most interesting, is the percent that are greater than or equal to level 4 and 5. We want that number to be real high. And as you'll see in a little while, our numbers are pretty good. Likewise in mathematics, again, this is a statewide snapshot. Same format. Again, try to acclimate yourself to what we're looking at here. Here are the grade levels. Going across from left to right, proficiency. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes, if you will. This is our district. Again, now that you're acclimated to the chart, take a look. I'm sure you're all eager to see where your child lies, grade 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. Take a look. Again, what's most interesting to me, or most exceptional, is what we have all the way on the right. Numbers are quite good. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go through each grade level. I will post this on our website. You can refer back to that starting tomorrow, anytime you wish. You can pour through this data more closely. But tonight I just want to give you a snapshot. This is language arts for Cedar Grove. Any particular questions on this slide here? No problem.
I think that's a dangerous thing.
You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Okay. All I'm saying to you is that my daughter came from a Catholic school.
Okay.
So this is her first year. Okay.
Great, welcome.
Thank you. So what you're saying is, say grade 9, out of 138 children who took the test for English language arts.
Correct.
Okay. Only really 19 of them exceeded the level. I'm not being critical. I'm trying to understand
Yes.
okay. So 63 met, which was a large number, met at least the expectation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So based on, like, if you were to go back to that other chart.
Comparing apples to apples, ELA
Well,
statewide.
it's kind of hard because you're not looking at actual numbers.
Correct.
State of New Jersey.
We're doing percentages here. That's
Yes.
correct.
So now, if I work in a high school, last year I was part of PARCC testing, and the particular high school that I was in, the numbers who actually took the test as opposed to the numbers who actually should have taken the test were completely askew.
Sure.
So it really wasn't a fair assessment to
Agreed.
what New Jersey was or wasn't capable with.
Right.
Because, is that correct?
That is correct. We had some opt-outs here as well. We had some students that refused the test. Our numbers weren't particularly high in grades 3 through 8, but in 9th grade, 10th grade, and in 11th grade, there were several students that chose not to sit for the test. So that does affect our data, for sure.
And there also was problems, I don't know about your school, but it was a computerized test, is that correct?
Correct.
And there were a lot of problems with the computers because it was such a new test, is that
That's
correct?
unfortunate. We had no problems at all.
Oh, okay.
None.
All right, I was just curious. I'm trying to figure out
Right.
this completely. Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
You're welcome. And so are we. Frankly, we've been through this 1 year. We don't have all the answers. I'm not up here pretending that I do, but we're here to partner with you, figure this out, encourage you to have your students participate for many reasons, some of which we'll cover, and we'll work through this together. Just getting back to the district results, now you're absolutely correct. I'm comparing now the individual number of students in each particular performance level. So we're not doing percentages anymore until we go all the way to the right. And this column here, again, represents the 4s and 5s. We like those numbers to be large, and ours are pretty good. Likewise for mathematics. Give you a moment to take that all in. I'll make some comments on this particular slide, if I may. Okay, this chart shows the district level outcomes for the first year of the PARCC assessment in each grade level of math, that you already knew. The first column includes the count of valid test scores in the district, just as it was for ELA in the slide before. Let's read grade 3 level outcomes, just as a for instance. I picked grade 3. Here we are. You'll see there are 126 students in grade 3 who receive valid test scores. 32% are not yet meeting expectations. However, 68% are meeting or exceeding expectations. So clearly we have work to be done here. We know that. We're not hiding that. But we're excited about this influx of data that will allow our staff to really start digging in and evaluating how our kids are doing at the standards level. Much work to be done. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. So any questions, any other questions on the data? Again, we'll post it. It'll be there. You can dig a little deeper. You have your student reports. We'll talk more about that. Okay. So, in response to that question, thank you for the segue. Perfect. In the next several months, we as a district will undertake an effort to learn what we can from the first year PARCC results. Of most importance is using this data to inform our understanding of strengths and potential gaps in the curriculum and instructional practices. We've been working to implement our new standards in earnest for approximately 2 years now, and this is the first set of assessments that are aligned to this work. Unlike our prior assessments, PARCC will provide the district with the ability to analyze our students' outcomes at the standards level, again allowing us to reflect on and improve upon both strengths and weaknesses. Let's talk a little bit about the feds. Yes, question in the back there.
Thank you. We're using the data to make changes now that'll be implemented now, or they'll be implemented next year, by which case we'll have new data from this year's PARCC score. I feel like, are we a little bit behind? Not us as a district, but
right.
Because we get the data late, when will the changes that we're looking at take effect, and how do we keep ourselves from falling behind from getting new data for this year's tests?
It's a good question, and it's one that educators across the state and in the PARCC consortium of 11 states is frankly frustrated about. The DOE knows that. The Department of Education knows that. We were promised PARCC data earlier on in the school year, and we're still being promised that with the next round of assessments this year, we will have this data before the next school year even begins. So you're not wrong. We are well behind in terms of when we'd rather have this data provided to our teachers. Well behind. I mean, it's the middle of January, right? And we're just now receiving this data. The kids that sat for this test are now halfway through, or nearly so, a couple of weeks away from being halfway through the year. But alas, we're all in the same bucket. Not that that makes it any better, but just understand that all of us that sat for the PARCC assessment for the first time are in that same situation. So, is it a total loss? No. Are changes being made now? Well, we're working towards realizing what those changes should be, frankly. Our staff has yet to really get their hands and their minds around what this data is telling us. And that's where the work lies. That's why we're here. We're telling you about what we're rolling up our sleeves to do now. In fact, we have an articulation day. As you know, we have half a day on Monday, the 18th, and in the afternoon, we'll be doing just that. Our teachers will be pouring through grade level PARCC data and starting the process of identifying where those strengths are and where those weaknesses are, and then turning that into professional development workshops for the summer, for the fall, into modifications to lesson planning, into the real stuff that's going to have an impact. So the process is ongoing. Is it later than it should be? No doubt it is. But the state tells us it'll be better next year. About 6 months better. Any other question? Okay, let's talk about the Every Student Succeeds Act. You may have heard it as formerly the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. You may not have heard of it at all. This is education at the federal level. It has to do with well, federal standards, federal funding. Districts like Cedar Grove that receive federal funding are required to participate in the state testing program. As in the past, the district must maintain a minimum of 95% participation or face the need to develop action plans to increase participation. So you may have heard of NCLB. Well, the state wrote a waiver in order to get funding. Okay, we have this act here, this Federal Accountability Act. And unless we want to be on an action plan next year, you need to make sure that yourselves, your neighbors, you're speaking with your friends and family, your children about the importance of sitting for the PARCC test. This is not, I'm not getting paid to promote the PARCC assessment. What I will tell you is we need your child's data, and this district needs your child's participation. We don't need to be bogged down by action plans trying to drum up business, so to speak. If we fall below 95% participation, which we were at after year one, we will be put on an action plan. Frankly, we don't need that. And there'll be a lot of wasted energy for me to stand out in the public and say, hey, please change your mind. Please come to us. Common Core standards aren't going away. PARCC's not going away. So I thank you in advance for participating. The PARCC window opens early mid-April. Let's get it done. Let's talk about the adjustments in PARCC in year two. Right, the feedback has been nonstop. The DOE, local education agencies, all of us have been getting feedback from you. It's been wonderful. It helps inform what we do. What are the changes? Well, let me walk you through them briefly. Adjustments to PARCC for this year include combining what was called the PBA, the Performance-Based Assessment, which was window one. It's ringing a bell. We had two windows, right? Performance-based assessment, and then we had a little bit of time, and then we had the end of year testing window. The state took them and combined them. And in doing so, they saved us about 90 minutes of testing. About 60 minutes on the math side, about 30 minutes on the language arts side. We will take it. We're appreciative of that. It will spare us lost instructional time. We're happy about that. In addition, some 11th graders participating in AP, or what's known as IB, you may have heard International Baccalaureate courses, similar to AP, those students will be exempt from taking the PARCC English Language Arts exam. The state has also provided extensive online information to parents and educators regarding how to understand and use the PARCC scores. So a lot of things have been going on in the background to help parents and educators prepare for PARCC. Okay, let's transition the program a little bit now. I'm almost done talking, I promise you. At this point, we'd like to mention a set of resources that have been developed for parents to help you understand your individual score report. If you brought them with you, at this point, you can take them out. What I'd like to do is highlight this website. It's called understandingthescore.org. It's everything PARCC. I mean that. I mean, there are videos, there are resources, there are all kinds of helpful hints on supporting your children at home and working with educators here as a team. What I'd like to do is focus now further attention on those reports. If you have those reports, you can take those out. So this is a screen capture, a screenshot of this understandthescore.org. You go there, you'll see this. I'm not connected to the internet here, so this is, again, a screenshot. Go to this site, please. Check it out. What I'd like to do now is transition to a short video. It's only 4.5 minutes long, and it will walk you through that individual score report that you have. We certainly realize that you've not seen these reports before. In fact, we hadn't either prior to this year. There's lots of information on them. Sit back, relax, we'll watch the video, and then we'll take questions from there.
Soon you're going to receive reports showing how your child scored on the new state tests in English, language arts, and mathematics. The results for your child and your school probably look different than previous state tests because the tests are different. For some, more rigorous and aligned to new learning standards your state developed to better prepare your child and all students for the next grade and success after school, in college, and careers.
In addition to addressing fundamental skills and concepts, the test includes questions that evaluate vital skills your child is developing, like critical thinking, problem solving, and analytical writing, all important to your child's future success.
Students can show their thinking and the steps they take to solve problems, which provides more detailed information to inform instruction.
When you look at your child's score report, the first item you'll see is your child's overall performance on the English language arts or math test. There's a separate report for each subject. Your child's overall performance is reported two ways, a performance level score and a numerical score. You'll notice the scores are grouped into 5 performance levels. Educators have established these levels to mark the extent to which your child has acquired the knowledge and skills students are expected to learn in each grade. On the graphic, you will see where your child's score falls within this range. You and your child's teachers and school can use this information to make decisions about how to support your child and enhance instruction. If your child scores at level 1, 2, or 3, it means he or she has areas to focus on to strengthen his or her skills and to be better prepared for the next steps in their education. This first year, many students may score in this range as they become more familiar with the new standards and assessments. Students who achieve level 4 or 5 on the assessments demonstrate a stronger understanding of the grade level material and are well positioned for continued success in the next grade and toward college and career readiness by graduation.
Compared to many previous state tests, scores may seem lower, but that's not because your child is learning less or falling behind. It's because he or she is being tested on new material that has been identified by educators, college faculty, and business leaders as essential for success in school.
In this first year of the new assessment, we're setting a new baseline. Student performance will improve in time as schools align instruction to the new standards and use information from these tests and other sources to meet your child's individual needs.
Below the overall performance section, you'll notice more detailed information about your child's performance on subject-specific skills identified by your state standards. These scores show how your child is learning these skills compared to students who are meeting grade level expectations in that area.
In this example, you will see information on reading and writing for the English Language Arts Literacy Assessment. The assessment has questions designed to evaluate specific reading skills, like comprehension of fiction and nonfiction texts and vocabulary. Other questions evaluate writing skills, like organizing and developing a summary of reading material. This more detailed information is new and different than previous tests. It is meant to help you and your child's teacher better understand your child's strengths and weaknesses so you can be partners in helping him or her thrive.
Getting results from PARCC and getting these scores from PARCC allows me to be able to make sure that I address the needs of my students more appropriately and more effectively.
You might be asking, well, what can I do now?
First, talk to the teacher. The teacher will have a ton of information, will give parents ideas of ways to help their student if they're falling a little bit behind, or ways to continue to grow a particular skill.
If you find that they're struggling with math, I would engage them in everyday real-world applications as it pertains to math, with the measuring in the kitchen or with some of the household finances.
There are also many resources for parents online, like bealearninghero.org or the National PTA. Please also visit understandthescore.org for additional information about the score report and for links to your state education department website.
Please remember that the success of your child and all students is the ultimate goal of the new standards and assessments. We have every confidence that all students can succeed in school and graduate prepared for college and careers.
Wow. Either we nailed it or we're sending you off into the cold, dark night with more questions than you had when you came here. Yes, please.
So have our teachers seen our children's scores at this point?
Many of them have, yes. And as I mentioned a moment ago, on Monday when we have that half of a professional day, the rest of them that haven't will be seeing them for the first time.
So, I mean, just looking at the video, should we be reaching out to our teachers about, if I have a specific concern, let's say, and
Sure.
to talk to them about strategies based on how they did on this English language arts, for example?
Sure. I always encourage parents to communicate with their teachers. But I'm a bit more pragmatic than some, I suppose. I would suggest we give our teachers a little bit of time to pore over more closely this PARCC data. Many of them, as I had said, literally have not seen their individual roster of students' data yet. We got it in our hands in December. The individual score reports were recently sent to you. And so the process really hasn't unfolded as we intended to. Having said that, any questions you have, by all means, reach out to your child's teacher. Yes.
PARCC, okay? Your teachers, just like everyone else's, they were teaching hopefully to establish good grades for the LSATs or the SATs or the PSATs, whatever. So now this is a different kind of test.
Indeed.
Right. So it sort of conflicts with, well, not really, however, your geometry 0, say, that came out on your schedule for last year's PARCC testing might quite honestly do better had they taken the equivalent of a standardized test like a PS, an SAT or, but this is a different kind of test, is that correct? So what I'm saying to you is that our old way of teaching for our old standardized test, which was very effective, now we bring into a new kind of genre,
Sure.
so to speak,
No
of
doubt.
testing.
Sure.
And so now our teachers now have to step it up, so to speak,
Yes.
so this is,
Yeah.
ultimately,
yeah.
I also want to ask, I was told by a very good guidance counselors from where I work that it's necessary that my daughter participate in testing, of course.
We would agree.
However, what happens to the child that opts out?
Well, there really is no opting out. The state, my apologies, the state doesn't acknowledge opting out. We've just sort of coined that phrase for convenience. What happens to the child? Well, the worst thing that happens to the child is that the data is not provided to your child's teachers. I mean, what could be worse than an assessment that we've been working towards that's aligned to the Common Core that we've been working on for years? The child skips that assessment. What's the worst that could happen? Well, all of that work, all the fine-tuning that the educator's done, that the child's been working towards, it doesn't go unnoticed, but there's a void in that child's portfolio. Right? Our teachers are trying to customize instruction for every child. You talk about differentiation, call it what you want. But the bottom line is educators need data to inform how they're going to help your child, and the next child. And the way I see it, this is the state testing program. This is designed to evaluate how well our teachers are teaching and our students are learning. We shouldn't deprive the process of that information. It makes it harder to do my job of helping your child if I don't have the data to do it. And I mean, data is used in all walks of life, and it's certainly used in education. And you can argue, it's maybe gone too far, but these are the rules. This is the playing field. And I would argue that you're putting your child at a disadvantage by not providing this information to his or her teacher. Sure.
Does New Jersey private schools, do they take PARCC tests?
I don't really know. I mean, I would imagine they have the option to do it or not to do it. I mean, this is a public school state requirement. What the parochials are doing, maybe some of them are. They don't have to. What they decide to do ultimately, I don't know. Sure. Anybody else? Come on, don't be shy. Yes, please.
What's the plan for students who
scored significantly low, like the 1 or the 2.
Sure. First
They're
of all,
not
it's
even at grade level expectations.
the first part of the plan is not panic. Do not panic. It's information. This data is valuable, but it doesn't press the panic button for any of you. It shouldn't make you panic at home, and it certainly doesn't make us panic as educators. It's an opportunity. The data provides an opportunity for our teachers to focus in on what the strengths and weaknesses are of each child. So if a child's presenting at level 1 or level 2, clearly there's more work to be done relative to that student's progress. And so we roll up our sleeves, we engage the parents at home, we look to identify strategies that will help that child in language arts and mathematics. Hopefully we're involving a team of teachers. If the child has an IEP, certainly the child study team is aware of the child's performance, and they'll be working with documents like the IEP to make sure the accommodations are incorporating PARCC data to focus on some of those gaps and some of those weaknesses. So it's an opportunity for us to reevaluate that individual child's program and how we're meeting his or her needs. But don't panic. The PARCC test is a difficult one. And as you heard from myself and from the video, we were preparing ourselves for a certain level of performance on this assessment. It's a tough test. The standards are relatively new. It's the first time around where we've aligned curricula to the new Common Core, and we've assessed that progress. And so the state, the DOE, the consortium of 11 states was expecting, and you've heard about the New York's scores and how surrounding states have done. We're not surprised that some of our students weren't scoring in levels 3, 4, and 5. We weren't surprised by that.
Do you think that the modifications to the testing for students that do have IEPs will be adjusted if they scored significantly lower?
I think that's a possibility. I don't know for sure. I do know that that's an ongoing conversation.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure. I do appreciate you coming out this evening. Again, I will post this presentation on the website. We're always here. Shoot us an email, pick up the phone, reach out to your teachers, your administrative team. Thanks for coming out. Please arrive home safely. Thank you.